Why is Hex better than Bitcoin? Well, first of all, it's the fundamentals of the code. The fundamentals of the code are better than Bitcoin's fundamentals. The inflation model is better than Bitcoin's inflation model. The staking feature is better than a mining feature. It's new tech versus old tech. It's decentralized versus centralized. Yes, all of those things. Well, ahoy, crypto pirates, Hexakin, Pulsekins, Icosakins. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you all here. This is a special edition of Chatting with the Captain because this is the first time I'm ever going to really just have a show dedicated to a crypto other than Hex. I'm not shilling crypto. In fact, everybody on this panel, including myself, don't want you to buy it. We don't want you to just jump in on it. We want you guys to all sit back, watch, and learn what's going on here. Because this isn't about coming in and aping into a token. This is about what DeFi can truly do. This is what PulseChain has brought to us. And some of the people on this panel actually participated in this. Some of these people on this panel built this thing. Some of these people on this panel are just looking at it and going, holy shit, what'd you guys do here? So there's going to be questions. There's going to be answers. There's going to be all kinds of excitement about it. But first, I want to just talk a little bit about the panel that's coming up because these guys are all special to me and they're all special to this community. Why? Most of them been around here for a long time. So we're talking about a protocol that is being built on Icosa called iBurn. But more so than that, we're talking about a protocol that was created a few months ago by a gentleman by the name of GiffTEC. And I've been, over the last year, 8 months to a year here, been working with him and learning from him on what is possible with DeFi now. And I'm telling you guys, the captain hasn't always been the guy that's gone out there and taught you things, but I've always been in the cutting edge and in the front of all of this stuff. Why? Because I know how to surround myself with stronger, smarter people. That's what I do, and that's what I do best. And I have aligned myself with the best in this community, from Richard Hart, Hexologist, to Kinetics, to Kool-Aid, to Gifford, to Big K, to all these guys in the community. They're out there doing the good work. I've aligned myself with them. Why? Because they're the ones that are doing things and going places and are pillars of this community. So for those of you who have words to say about the cabal, screw your cabal. These people actually care and have been here from the beginning working on this. Not to dump on your heads, but to create something better. That's what we've been trying to do. All of these guys here put their blood, sweat, tears, money, and reputations on the line to make Richard's ecosystem better. And I'm proud to say that I'm aligned with them. I'm proud to say that I'm backing them. I'm proud to say that they are part of this community. And me here with every little bit of endorsement I can, I'm supporting all of these guys here. So first of all, I'd like to say that we've got a gentleman coming in here by the name of Maximum Broadcast. He was one of the early streamers in the Icosa Hedron protocol. He hasn't been streaming a lot lately, but he was one of the brilliant minds inside figuring all of that out and explaining it to you guys. So he's coming up. We've also got Crypto Kool-Aid. Everybody knows him. He is one of he figured this stuff out many, many years ago when we first started, and I didn't understand what he was talking about, but he was already talking about these protocols and what can be possible if we could find people that can build them, or if there were people out there that wanted to build them and expound upon these types of ideas that he had in his head, you know, and way before his time, Crypto Kool-Aid. He's sitting there with Zenith. Zenith is one of the newer streamers in the community, but brilliant and supporting all of us and supporting the people that are doing the right thing. So he's going to be coming up too. Also, the man himself, my partner, KNTX, needs no introduction. He's been here from day one, supporting me, When I was down and out, when I had problems with my family, he came and picked up Discourse Syndicate and said, I got you, bro. And we've been partners ever since, making movies, building businesses, working on Hex and PulseChain. And he's my trusted business partner, and also my right-hand man here at Discourse Syndicate. And he's going to be up here talking about it, because on top of being a solid businessman and individual within this community, he is also my good friend and brilliant when it comes to making these protocols work, liquidity providing, you name it. He is one of the best. And last, but definitely not least, oh, wait a minute. I almost forgot. So another gentleman that's been here from the beginning, and also one of my dearest friends in the community. I just love this guy. When you're around him, he's infectious. He's just the nicest guy. He produced the highest of stakes. He's done so many things for this community, from throwing baseballs in freaking stadiums to streaming with Cabana in the early days and all the way to now, to just having VIP parties for us whenever we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Big K is going to be joining us here, because he's also one of the brilliant minds, early Bitcoin miner, premiered in the highest of stakes, and also produces. So just putting his money where his mouth is and everything else too. And then, of course, last but not least, somebody who I just got familiar with over the last year here, working with him and watching him build, grow, develop. I think, in my opinion, one of the most brilliant minds in crypto. Why? Because, guys, look, before PulseChain, these things weren't conceivable. Like, they were thoughts in people's minds, but they wouldn't go there because they couldn't do them. This guy is doing them. He saw what was possible, and on top of that, expounded upon them and built this amazing protocol called GIFF-TEC. And so it was, I want everybody to understand what happened here. So the team, as they put it together, they didn't want to hype this thing. They didn't want to get everybody to come in and buy it and pay streamers to talk about it and all that kind of stuff. In fact, when we all started talking about it, I told them, look, guys, I'm not going to start talking about this until it's working and running and we've got some solid footing under it. And then everybody agreed. And in fact, we've tried to keep it under wraps, and it's been up and running for the last 3 months on its own. And just a couple of weeks ago, Gifford took it and created the GIFF token. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and what that burn protocol means. And then its first project, its first iteration of the protocol itself, of the Gifford protocol, is now going to be called iBurn, and it's going to do it to Icosa. Now imagine this thing can be a furnace for anything. And so without any further ado, all of the guys themselves, first of all, the man who's done it, the brilliant mind of the Gifford himself, Maximum Broadcast, Big K, the Kool-Aid in the Zenith, and my right-hand man, Mr. K. What's happening, guys?
What's going on, everyone?
What's going on? Thanks for all the kind words.
Yeah. That was a hell of a lead-in.
Yes. Well, I could have told him the truth, but
well, thank you for leaving out the truth on me, Captain. I appreciate that. But everything about you guys is all true. It's all true.
So I'm going to just lay it out there and probably have GIF get started with it. Real quick, I'll give everybody the 411 because they're going to hear from the brilliant minds. Guys, the dumb of this thing is this. The Gifford token was created as just kind of a meme token so that he can test his protocol. And what he did was he created this burn protocol called the PGIF burn protocol. And it's actually called Giffordware. But what he did was you inject the meme token, the GIF token in, and you also inject Pulse in to the system. The GIF token itself is burned, therefore creating a positive loop for the GIF token. The Pulse that goes in is used to buy the PGIF that was just minted 1-for-1 from the GIF that burned into your wallet. So you get PGIF in your wallet. The Pulse that goes in and buys off the market, off of a aggregator that actually I'm sorry, not aggregator, gosh, the words.
It's a DEX aggregator.
Yeah, a DEX aggregator. I'm sorry. Thank you. So the DEX aggregator makes the most efficient route, purchases the PGIF off the market, not from you. You've already got your PGIF. Purchase it off the market, therefore making the stuff that just landed in your wallet more valuable, and then burns that. And now you've got a protocol that can do this with just about any token. And what they're going to do is we're going to talk about them doing it with Icosa today called iBurn. So GIFF, did I butcher that or did I get the basics of it? And I'll let you expound upon it.
You got the basics, which is perfect because then we do what we love to do, which is expound on it, right? So that's exactly how we like it, just like that. But yeah, no, I mean, I would prefer if anybody else in this panel take a shot at expounding a little bit further. I like to hear you guys talk about more than hearing myself talk about it again.
We're actually going to put Zenith on the hot seat because he did drive 12 hours to come interview
There we
me.
go.
So I know, right? Pony up. So there you go.
I've become Kool-Aid's favorite new play toy, apparently. He enjoys watching me try to re-explain these concepts to other folks. But I will say that the GIF and PGIF relationship is pretty cool because like we talked about before, to make PGIF, you have to use GIF plus 10 pulse. What that does is that it uses that pulse to re-buy up the PGIF token. And the reason that this is different than other buy and burns is twofold. One is that it specifically goes and rebuys the actual token itself and then burns a good chunk of it. And then additionally, it's the fact that it's using PETITION to actually get that DEX aggregation in. For everybody that watched us on the F and Hangout on Friday, by the way, we were talking about this, which is that a lot of other buy and burn protocols sometimes can get bottlenecked by trying to direct their funds to a single source or a single liquidity pool that's coded with it. But using PETITION, it's actually getting the most effective use of your money, or your pulse in this case, to then rebuy that PGIF and pump that price exponentially. And I mean, it's been doing pretty well over the last few days, I got to say. And on top of that, with the launch of iBurn coming up, this is actually going to take it to a whole new level. And in my opinion, there's going to kind of become a world where it's like pre-iBurn and post-iBurn, because iBurn is actually going to add another layer to this that we really can't go back from, in my opinion, just because iBurn is going to boost PGIF that much more when it comes out.
Great job. Fantastic, Zenith. Love it.
Like I said, he's a good play toy. His own words, not mine. He has learned very, very well, and I've thrown him into the ringer. And it was really cool to hear him figure out different ways to explain it. That's not us. That's why it's so cool to have Maxim and Kay and all the other people, because we've heard it 1,000 times. But when you get someone else explaining it, it really gets exciting to, those of us that been here.
I thought he was just your favorite play toy because he liked your cap, but then I find out the guy knows something. I love it.
Well, much appreciated. And I was going to say, on the stream previously, this guy pulled up Microsoft Paint and said, cool, draw this for everybody. Explain it that way. And I was like, oh, God.
Yep. So what do you think, Kay? Or Maxim?
Yeah. I feel like that was a great summary. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of curious where the direction of this goes. And I want to hear more as well.
I'd like to hear the possibilities too. Obviously we should get into a little more detail about the protocol itself, especially iBurn itself, and what it does and how it functions. Even though it's very similar to what I just explained, I'd like to start talking about the possibilities and get into a conversation that way. But could somebody expound on iBurn itself and talk about the details of how the iBurn works versus how the PGIF works?
Well, first, let's start to talk about pillars. And pillars are probably the most important component that you want to start off with. So when GIF and I first started, we started with no leaky boat, creation, not inflation, simulation, and not speculation. And when you start to use these components together with the PermaBull, you now have a fundamental flywheel that works as anchors, keystones, and cornerstones.
So Kool-Aid, would you expound on each one of those, what they mean?
Sure. No, of course. And that's why, like in game dev, we always start with our pillars. And that way, as we're building all these crazy things, we can revert to our core concepts that as we move through things that we do, we can reference it. Well, the first thing is no leaky boat. At the end of the day, I can make it short and sweet, just for Ken, that whatever's the best for the protocol is best for the user in the long run. But what you really have to look at is cutting the fat, making sure that there's no squeeze or anything leaked away from the system, so it's airtight.
Could you give
Second
an
pillar.
example of what a leaky boat would look like and what a leaky boat wouldn't look like in a protocol so that people can kind of
Sure.
like, okay, this is a leaky thing. This is what PGIF fixes as far as a pillar
Sure.
of what it is. Yeah.
Well, the next pillar that would go into, because they all connect, is going to be in our creation, not inflation. Technically, when you are inflating a token, you are causing a causality that is widening what it has, whether it's supply or let's just say an airdrop component or all the rest of this type of yield that's not actually binding back into the system. So when you have those things, yes, they're cool in and of themselves, but you can actually go the other way and make things tighter and tighter and tighter, almost like a black hole where everything gravitates toward the center.
So wait, so no ICO, no sacrifice, no inflation of a coin by mining, staking, or anything else, but actual value going in and a creation of a token popping out the other side. So that's what you mean by creation, not inflation, right?
Well, creation, not inflation, dovetails from the no leaky boat concept. But like on a leaky
that's
boat
one
system,
of the leaks, basically, right?
Yeah, the inflation is a part of a leak, just like having, let's say, a marketing budget. If something does well what it's supposed to do, it markets itself. It doesn't need 20% for the marketing budget. All these other things are encapsulating what could happen or where an externality may be. There are times when you want budgets for different buckets. However, if you look at it as the forefront is what does it give you against what is it not doing to help the system? So then would that say the next pillar is simulation, not speculation. And because we basically started with not talking about this at all, and technically all of this is the backbone for where we started, which is Pulsar, which is doing very different multiple things at the same time. But we took a core concept of an idea, and as architects and systemic designers, Giff and I thought about how do we start this flywheel with components that we can measure. So while we're talking about Pulsar, Giff stealth launched Giffordware. Nobody knew about it. We didn't talk about it. We were talking about the bigger system that we were concepting out in our mind. So that way we could see this happen in real time, right? Let it just sit there for a month or two. And if people figure it out.
Yeah, but it was even a surprise to the rest of us.
Oh,
like,
yeah. No,
you launched this? I saw his name come up on Deck Screener as a new token. I said, did you just launch this?
Yeah, and the team didn't even know that he had done this. Like it was out for a couple of months before the team even knew, which I mean, and that just goes to the integrity of the project and Giff himself and what he's trying to do. Because, yeah, I thought we can talk about that. I just want to grab a couple more things. So what I was saying, Kool-Aid, was so basically fixing the leaky boat. One of the leaky things, and we'll probably maybe catch a few more here that we can expound upon the pillar. Was the inflation, was creation versus inflation. Now, is this a new way to launch a token without any of those things that I talked about?
Yeah, I mean, you can. It's the difference when you're looking again at systems. So a lot of people have blinders on because it's convenient to look at things that have been done before instead of using those as a touch plate, a compass, as a North Star to unwind and rewind the same ideals. That's why it's okay if you fork things, but it's better to understand the components. That way you can do something a little different. And that was a kind of another big of our pillars, is that we never wanted to be painted into a corner. And we wanted to air quote, call it experimental tech because we've never done this and this has never before been seen. So if you do that, you want to start out with nice, simple checklists that you can go through, see how it wetles the water, see how it's going to go from there, and then strike on the next idiom or ideal that you want to attack. And that's how we started to glom our pillars together.
Okay, but you didn't answer my question, and maybe somebody else can answer it. In my pea-brain mind, what I'm thinking is this looks like a new way to launch a token. Is it?
Yes, it is.
Connects, jump in there. Connects. I want to hear your opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. We have sacrifice fatigue over here, and we absolutely loved the idea of fair launch. We just hadn't seen anyone do it in a way yet that didn't highly incentivize the early adopters with no meat on the bone left for the late people. So we wanted to fix that. We wanted a way to give everybody an opportunity with thick liquidity and the opportunity to get in with low slippage and get some real coin distribution without anyone having to worry about what the price was going to do immediately and whether they were going to get their piece before everybody else. So absolutely, this is our solution, our workaround for this. And we did a lot of brainstorming. We ran a lot of different scenarios through. And the beauty of it was both Kool-Aid and Gifford, when there was a proposal out there, like, let me think about that. And they think about it overnight and they'd come back and say, you know what? I see a leaky boat. Okay, back to the drawing board. Let's do it again. So a lot of repetitions and a lot of discussion within the team itself to come up with some really, really solid tokenomics, if you will.
Well, I'd like to just stop right there for a minute and just say how huge that is when it comes to re-looking, from regulatory perspective alone, re-looking at how a crypto is created, and giving the regulators another facet to have to look at and have to regulate through, if it ever does come, you know what I mean? But this is huge just on that alone. I mean, and that's only one part of the pillars that Kool-Aid's talking about, is just the creation versus inflation. And I like the fact that value is being injected, value is being created all around the system as that e-gift token being created. I don't see negative externality. I see Pulse being used. I see Pulse being spent on behalf of the minter, on behalf of the person that injected value, and nothing going to some weird wallet somewhere where somebody's making a bunch of value or anything like that. I see that this protocol on its own creating value for all of the tokens that are involved for the user itself, right off the bat, zero negative externality. Am I correct to say?
Yeah, his internet shot, guys. I'm sorry, Captain. We were getting Robo RG3 like every third word.
Oh crap! Yeah, something going on here. Hold on a second. It's my internet for some reason is acting up. Am I back?
No, yeah, you're still Robot. Hey, Maxim, why don't you come ask some questions while we wait for the Caps internet to come on?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me. I don't know where to start. I feel like I could try to jump into the deep end. So is the focus of this specifically iBurn right now? Is that where we want to go? Or are you wanting to talk about GIF and
I'll keep it real short. It's essentially these were experiments we wanted to say, like, hey, we've got these theories. We think putting protocol first is better than putting anybody else first, including the founders.
Yes. Right.
What's good for the protocol is good for everybody involved. It seems, generally speaking, that has always been the case, but everybody tends to dance around that idea. Yeah. And we could sit here and talk about this till we're blue in the face and just try to convince people that we're right. Or we could just build it and show people that this can be done and then talk about it. That's the idea.
So one thing I really like is what I feel is creativity in this project. I don't see a direct copy of something else. I see another explanation for how things can be done. And that resonates with me personally. I'm a huge fan of iterations and better explanations, and the hope for a better future comes from some kind of change to what we have now. If we want something better, it's going to be different by nature, but change isn't always good. And so I like the other side that you seem to be emphasizing, where we'll try this. We'll start small. We won't we'll test something on a small level and see how it works and observe, and maybe there's some more surprise that happens, and we can improve our explanation in a more with more impact, or with more you can put more power behind it or something. And I also love it. There's a lot of room for token prices to go up if they start small. If the whole community is already so optimistic about how this token is going to go, they're going to try to bake it in on the very first day. And I also appreciate that about this project so far. And those are some of my very first impressions from what I'm hearing. Maxim,
to your point, if you talk to these guys long enough, I'm sure you'll hear it 1,000 times, but this is not forking, this is actual creation, which is why the guys like to talk about it being an experiment, or rather than a finished product. This is just steps that are being stacked on top of each other. So yes. GIF was step 1, PGIF is next. We're going to do they're doing the iBurn launch. And then after that, I think the ultimate goal is Pulsar, because the goal is to make sure that everything works, so that when the big project comes together, it's flawless.
Yeah. And not only that, like,
hey guys, am I back?
Yeah, you are. Let me go grab one more note there, because let's just not talk about it as creation of token launch, not new tech even there, because it all is. This is a replacement for staking, which we could call reverse liquid staking, because technically you have all the tokens. You can see the entire supply that'll ever exist. And it's up to you to have smart contract interaction to know what you do, because staking has 2 different components, not just yield, but it's a time lock of yourself that we learned in Hex. Because if you actually time laddered your Bitcoin from 2010 till now with 0 yield, you would have been a happy person, because you would have had so much weight of coin. When you have the inflation aspect of that staking, that's a different thing. So because we're using mechanics that if you use the system correctly, number go up, and you can use it as an arb machine. You can use it to support other tokens and balance with each other. There's so many other ways you can use this particular set of systems that we're setting up in a completely new streamline or swim lane to approach DeFi for all.
Okay. I'm back, right?
Yep.
I switched over to Wi-Fi for some reason. I don't know why I did that. But anyway, what I was trying to say was what I really like about the protocol is that not only is it creating a token using different metrics and not using inflation, and its creation versus anything else, and it changes the game for token existence. And regulatory may even have to take a whole nother step and look at this. Gosh dang it did it again. Anyway, hopefully I can last here. The cool thing is that it is a no negative externality injection of value in and token out. The tokens that go in all the systems, there's no negative externality going towards the GIFT token that was burned. There's no negative externality going towards the Pulse that was actually used. There's no negative externality going towards the token that the user, the creator, purchased, because their token is being bought and burned with the Pulse. So in the use and the creation of this token, there is 0 negative externality. Am I correct?
Well, we haven't found any yet. That's part of the simulation. We're running the simulation. We did this. Part of the reason we did this is we had this, especially one particular discussion with a founder that said this isn't going to work when we started talking about Pulsar. So we went ahead and said, oh yeah, well, let us show you it will. And so, everything has gone exactly as we had hypothesized so far, and actually exceeded our expectations. So this has been fantastic.
That's awesome. And hopefully we can get into the second half of that, which there's a question here that I'm going to pull up. So would you say that what I just said is actually the wrapping up of the leaky boat situation? Like, that is what has created a no leaky boat situation, is that there are no negative externalities in creating this token through this protocol.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like I said, we're still looking for them just in case, because there can always
so far
be
the boat's floating and there's no water in it.
we don't have the buckets out, and we're not bailing water. That's for darn sure right now at this point. So
Right
that
on.
is
Well,
very apparent.
I'm going to pull up this question because now I know you guys are going to jump all over this like a fat kid on a cupcake, because this is the second and the better half of all of this. And I think GIF, I'd love for you to jump in on this, and Kinetics, because you two are like on the tip of the spear when it comes to this part. So Money Talk with Dane. What's up, Dane? Still having a hard time understanding where the buy pressure comes in. Can't buy and burn your way out of sell pressure. Gentlemen, please answer that question and tell him what the beautiful, beautiful part of this really is, and why we seen the pump last week is my guess is what you guys are going to answer to. So I'll let you guys take it away and answer Dane and tell him the beautiful part about his quest. The answer to his question.
Really want to hear GIF tell this part, because I don't say it nearly as succinctly as he does.
Well, don't build me up too much. Let me give it a shot. Sometimes I get rusty.
And would you please tell everybody the name of this, before you start explaining it, so that they can focus on what you're doing here?
So this is essentially my PermaBull tokenomics. This is something that I sat around and for the people who know me best, I was prodding them on a nearly weekly basis, being like, what do you call this situation where there is a large buy and burn happening? Like, you're taking capital, you're purchasing the token and then burning it out of existence. Like, yeah, we understand the process, but what is the theory behind that? What is really happening there? And the only word I could come up with was permabull. It is a perma-bullish stance. It's not a situation where a whale comes in and buys, who eventually could dump, right? It's not a situation where all this liquidity goes on a DEX and you're like, hey, look I'm backed by all this liquidity. Liquidity can be pulled. There's a different animal that comes with the buy and burn. And at least personally, I was most fascinated with PulseChain when that came out, and looking at that buy and burn and looking how much that's buying and burning, right? But to get to the point, permabull tokenomics is where the creation of a token can only exist through value coming into the protocol, and then that value is also being used to buy and burn the token you just minted. So if that token never existed, there was no pre-mint like the way PGIF is. There was no PGIF pre-minted. This is very important. Zero. It started at zero supply. The only way it comes into existence is through real economic value. In this case, GIF and PLS, right? Now, the PLS that comes in, majority of that economic energy is used to buy and burn that same exact token. So every time this token is minted, there is a perma-bullish stance on that token. So when you ask these questions, like, the buy pressure has to come from somewhere. The buy pressure comes from the creation of the token itself. So what that really means is that there is no reason why somebody would over and over and over put in a large amount of economic energy to sell it at a loss. There is no reason for somebody to come in and do that. People do not like selling for losses. So if they mint it and they sell it for a loss, they will tend to not mint anymore, and they'll have no more to sell on the market. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, so I think that maybe talking about the real value that's being created on the other side of it would be the arbitrage opportunity, and what's created from the system itself,
step, right? So that's the next step. So now when we're talking about why would somebody mint and then sell for a loss, right? They typically wouldn't. So the supply kind of stays stagnant. But if it's purchased on market because people want to speculate, or maybe the buy and burn's purchasing it, and it pushes above that value, so now you can mint PGIF, and that value is greater than the value you plugged in, then you could immediately sell it, and that difference in value is now your profit.
Yep.
But every time this is done, it creates a new perma-bull stance in the ecosystem, because every time you go to mint, you're supplying the buy and burn.
And one more step on that, remember the reflexive loop, that each time you do that process, you're actually sending the first token to the debt address. So each time you play with this flywheel, not only are you enhancing economic energy, you're taking power into the PermaBull side, less of the source asset. The coal that creates the diamond is no longer in position or in play. Each time you use the system correctly, instead of just trading, you're now creating economic movement and reduction of supply and the deletion on the other end. It's a reflexive system, or a balancing loop and a refining loop.
Or as Kool-Aid likes to call it, a fat kid and a skinny kid on a teeter-totter.
That's right.
Could you guys explain then? Okay, so you said something there, Kool-Aid, about the burn going to a dead address versus an actual like burn. The tokens still exist; they're just unusable, right? So this is kind of like if hexagons were looking at this would kind of be like a locked OA situation where the tokens are still technically circulating, but they're out of control of anybody. Is that correct?
Yes and no. Well, yes and no, though. There is a caveat to that. Yes, the GIFT token is sent to the dead address, but the other PermaBull tokens are completely burned out of existence. Like, cease to exist. They don't go to a dead address. They just simply cease to exist. The protocol allows for the burning of that token permanently.
And
gotcha.
The other
so that
caveat
reduces
that
the supply completely when the GIFT token is purchased off of the PETITION aggregator. Those are completely burned out of existence. They're not sent to a dead address.
And the reason why you need to understand this is because some people have already launched tokens that aren't scripted to be burnable. So the first simulation that we're doing with this is that anything that is in existence can go to a dead address. Things that are actually burnable, that have these kind of paradigms and let's call it metadata baked into their system, can do something else. So it's kind of like understanding the difference between a native hex stake and an HSI stake, because when you're native in your set, you're already locked in what you can do. And then on the other side, when you have an HSI stake and you can tokenize it, transfer it, do all sorts of other fun stuff, that time locked stake is baked in with that metadata into its creation as well.
Okay. I wasn't making a statement. I was asking a question. Was I right with what I said? Please don't put me on the line as being the guy that explained that. I want to know, was I correct in saying that was I explaining what Kinetics was talking about, was that the token that was created, the PGIF, was bought and burned by the pulse that went in off of PETITION, the DEX aggregator, and then that PGIF there was burned and not sent to the dead address.
Correct.
Okay, and taken out of complete circulation, lowering the supply completely.
Correct. We had someone that came into the Telegram channel. Like, how can something with such low market cap jump so much? And it's like, well, you're not understanding how the system works. You're not looking at all the components that are in this particular cog of wheels.
Okay. I think we're getting it. Everybody getting it out there? Anybody got questions? Oh wait, Stylo asked a question, I think. And what is the cream and the cream corn? I think GIF's working on that, bro. We'll get that answer for you.
New recipe coming soon.
So okay, so I think we got a grasp on the tokenomics of what Gifford has created with Giffordware and his experiment with the PGIF token. So now let's apply this to Icosa. Let's talk a little bit about Icosa first. Maxim, I'd love for you to jump in here and talk a little bit about Icosa and kind of what your mind is telling you here based on what you're hearing and what the potential is and kind of just look. There's a lot of people in the on the stream watching, and I'd like for them to know exactly, before we talk about iBurn, what Icosa is.
Oh, good question. So yeah, Icosa and Hedron were created by Alex, and I thought they were fascinating projects because they gave the ability to borrow against T shares. So we had a project launch recently that allows you to borrow against liquid hex, but a huge value of hex itself is the stakes. and the natural incentives that come from community locking up their tokens for a period of time. And Alex saw the ability to basically borrow against the hex value that was staked with Hedron and Icosa, and Hedron came out first. Hedron is given to you basically directly proportionate to how many T-shares you have. It accrues every day. And Icosa was the second iteration that came out later. And essentially you can borrow again. You can you don't borrow, you can give your hex that is staked for put it into Icosa protocol and get Icosa out the other end. So you give your precious locked hex to the Icosa contract in return for Icosa. And there's like it's kind of complicated, but so Icosa is one of those tokens that doesn't have a set supply. It can basically be printed. You can stake your Icosa once you get it. You can stake it and get Icosa and Hedron back from the Icosa protocol. But I don't know how far down that rabbit hole we want to go. I could continue trying to describe that.
Maxim, do you remember the arbitrage play that was happening at the very beginning of the launch of Icosa? Maybe tell us, to the best of your recollection, how exactly that worked and how it went down.
So like, you're talking about like the theoretical ceiling prices and things like that? Yeah. So if the Icosa value rises to a certain amount, that's when it becomes profitable for people to take their, basically you could buy hex off the market, stake it, max length 5555, and put it into the Icosa contract. And since the Icosa dollar value was higher than the cost to buy that hex, you could arbitrage that. So I could look on the market one day and be like, oh my, Icosa's whatever it was, $2. And oh my goodness, if I stake, buy some hex right now, stake it, max length, put it in the Icosa contract, I can get a higher dollar value back in that Icosa. I could dump the Icosa if I wanted to. And it was incentivizing when that happened, when the Icosa price rose that high, it was incentivizing people to lock up their hex for the full length. It baked into the Icosa contract was the longer your hex stake was, basically if it was max length, you got, I think, a 10% bonus. You got 10% more Icosa. So it was incentivizing this arbitrage play, which was encouraging people to lock hex. That's great, but it wasn't increasing the supply of Icosa. And so it was an interesting project to watch play out.
So is there two kind of arbitrage opportunities there? Because you said that if the Icosa price went up, you can dump the Icosa for more hex than you had put in, and then you can rebuy and go back into the system, or you can just keep the extra hex, right?
Or you could dump your Icosa and buy more hex and not put it back in,
and just keep more hex. Right?
Keep more hex.
So there's two ways to win there: either continue to go through the loop, or just collect more hex as you're going through the loop.
Right.
Kind of like stopping before you go through the next step and sticking with the token you may want or whatever.
Exactly. Right. And two of the main things that was pretty obvious that I really wanted to test was, one thing I realized with that, and Maxim touched on it, is that the supply is dictated by the demand at that point. So essentially what I'm saying is if there's a lot of demand on market for Icosa and it pumps the price above that hex Icosa ratio, it allows Icosa to not outrun its core token, which is hex, that it's designed to protect. And then new tokens come into existence to then try to meet that demand, right? While still being a benevolent actor towards hex by locking up a ton of hex for 15 years, right? 15 plus years. So those two things are critical, but you also touch on another important fact that, like, there was no real way to regulate the inflation. Like, what do you do when the inflation just gets a little too wild, right? And there's not enough demand to catch up to it. So
Correct.
that is why, like say with PGIF in particular, that the it incentivizes the protocol to burn itself as well as the arbitrage happens. So it's a self-regulating system, which is really fascinating because these are some of the more interesting statistics I like to watch. Is what's the percentage of total PGIF that has come into existence currently burned? You know, it started at like it kicked up to like 14% pretty quick, and then it like goes down to 12%, and then it jumped up to 18%, and it like cools off at 16%, and now it's at 22%. So 22% of all the PGIF that it was ever minted is already deleted.
Wow.
So there's now a self-regulating supply mechanism that I've never seen anything like it before.
Which answers our question earlier that I put up on the screen from one of the players, was asking about, you know, what's to stop the dumping and all of that. Would you also say that this is another patch on the leaky ships?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to keep making sure that Larry's pillars are being verified, validated, and we know what these leaky spots are, so that everybody understands what it is that what we've created here. Because I'll admit, I've been part of it from the beginning, and watching these guys do this and being part of listening to it and understanding it. And one of the other things I know is we just talked about the Icosa loop. You know, you guys taught me how to use a system. Guys, I actually interacted with a contract when we first launched. RG himself interacted with a contract. Scary as fuck, I gotta admit. I didn't want to screw anything up. I didn't want to screw anything I had or the contract or any of that stuff up. But it worked out. But what I noticed also is that, you know, we talked about Icosa and Hex and you know, the two different types of arbitrage opportunities there, either creating more Icosa for yourself and more Hex. But I noticed that while I was playing with the system, that not only was I, you know, arbitraging and showing myself how to earn more p-hex based on the differences between the prices of GIF and p-hex, but I was also able to stop and load up on more of a pulse bag if I wanted to. So that's something maybe we can talk about. Is it's exactly kind of the same loop here, the arbitrage situation, where you can actually gain more pulse by playing with the Gifford system here, right?
Yeah, and so there's someone that's actually not going to leave till Big K speaks. So Big K, you're not allowed to speak all night, but I definitely actually want to hear what you have to say first. And then one other pin in that is that Alex bootstrapped the staking yield for 360 days, I believe. And so like that is why this particular system, without people using the Icosa Hedron loop on a T-share and how that works, it needs to have another activation to go back through its methods. So this activates it on many other occurrences to make not just eHex relevant, both Icosas relevant, and the entire system relevant. But Big K, let's hear from you. See what you got to say.
Well, there's some moving parts here. You know, what I see is like, you know, that there's, I mean, basically the whatever you build on top of this, the PGIF GIF system there's some arbitrage opportunity between them. There's about 10 pulse worth of like difference between the two tokens just by the game mechanics that you spoke up. So like it costs 10 more to create a PGIF from a GIF. So there's that like amount. So if one costs more or less than that, there should be, in theory, some arbitrage opportunity there. Now, the next layer of this is like a larger buy-in, you know, essentially, or a larger payout to the PGIF system. So like if you're like, hey, why would I want to? Because like it's all about narratives and why we want to buy shit, and so like, why do you want to buy this? Well, if you buy the GIF token, don't, do or don't or whatever. But like if you do, then there's this system, this arbitrage opportunity here that it comes with kind of. But then also we're doing these things that will feed back into it, like iBurn. And in an iBurn situation, it's just like that, except for the inputs in the system are Icosa, not just one Icosa, both types of Icosa. Neat. So that there's another arbitrage opportunity that's like going to be right here, like as we're speaking about it. These two different fucking coins that are at two different prices right now, that the same two coins can go into the pot and shit out this other token, the iBurn. Now, that iBurn to create takes more pulse. Go figure. So like that pulse that you're going to spend is not just a little bit more pulse, because like the first wave of the system is 10 pulse in it, to create a PGIF. Whereas in this one, it's what is it, 1,500?
1,500.
So you got a much bigger chunk of pulse that like is going into this system to like create the iBurn. Now I'll get further to like my questions. I have a couple, but basically like the chunk of that gets fed into buying up the PGIF gift price, through the mechanics. 15% I think goes of the pulse goes to buying that. Is like 15% of 1,500 pulse is a lot bigger of a number, 22x some odd number,
22 and a half times greater than the 10.
Than the 10. So like the base level token of GIF is incentivized to move up quite a bit higher in price because you got this much larger buy and burn supplying it. So that's that part right there. Now the other arbitrage side, like buy and burn thing going on, is that there's Icosa and Icosa, or whatever, however you want to distinguish the two, and they're different prices. But if you're feeding the other 85% of the pulse that goes into the system, it's fed into buying and burning those two, then the two prices of these two tokens should come somewhere convergent, because like you're putting in half is going towards buying the one that's at fucking 4 cents and half's going to buying the one at 8 cents or 7 or whatever the hell it is right now. And so like, a lot more weight is percentage wise is going into the smaller token to ideally bring its price in some close parity. Now this takes volume to do, and like attacking, or whatever you want to call the term, piggybacking onto another token like Icosa makes a lot of sense due to, we can all look up the volume. It's not super thick. There's not like a crap ton of volume, and there's not a crap ton of liquidity. So like, because of that, it's going to be, somewhat possible in my mind, to get these two tokens a lot closer to their parity. Now the question that I have about this all, that like after we've done this whole thing, because like I imagine that if this proprietary tech that we're working with here is like is something that you can add on to other tokens, I imagine there's other tokens are interested in, we can put this in whatever, then like there could be more than one feed loop going to feed your PGIF GIF, which is the base layer, getting some percentages of everything, but just like any other sort of, subscription like service that's out there for being built on top of it. And then you're left with, at the very end of all of that, whoever is putting into this flywheel is left with, in this situation, I don't know about further layers, iBurn. Now, my big question that I have to ask is, because I understand, I'm pretty dead on with what I'm saying numbers wise, and all of this.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Correct?
Great job.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the question that I have is, why do I want iBurn?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons, but one thing that we hope to accomplish with this, and I'm looking at the charts from the time we started talking about iBurn and being able to accept both eIcosa and pIcosa, so you can burn either one to create iBurn. Well, what's the cheaper one right now? eIcosa, right? So why would you be spending the more expensive token
No,
when you can just use the
but
cheaper
you're,
one?
You're right. There's actually two layers of why these will peg. One
Yeah.
being the buy and burn, the other being the natural market effect, for sure.
So since we started talking about iBurn publicly last week and started releasing the flowcharts, Icosa on Ethereum was half the price of PulseChain Icosa. It has moved up so close that we're less than 2 cents away from the Icosa on both chains hitting parity. So that is one of the reasons we want to do this. We also it is our hypothesis, and we're running the simulation right now. As soon as this thing is live, it is also our hope that it also re-kicks in the at least the EHEX arbitrage opportunity and the auctions that run through the Icosa ecosystem as well. So that's just two things that I just wanted to throw out there real quick.
Those
So we
are
can
cool. I love let me remind myself, like, we're doing, like, this is a narrative based game, and I mean, the tech is amazing, but like, what's the story here?
all about
And,
narratives.
like, yeah, and so, like, when I'm trying to, like, get to the root of that, I'm like, I want parody things, you know.
Yes.
More parody would be fantastic for those who, you know, just were lazy sacks and didn't sell one way or the other. I'll be one of those. So like, yeah, I'm a huge fan of it. I'd love to also restart some of the, like, the auction system was a neat piece of this puzzle. Having all that be an option for people to take part in again, fantastic. You know, like I said, my only question still is like, why do I want this fucking iBurn, and what am I going to do with this iBurn once I get it? You know,
Let me try to
scenario.
attack that in the most vague way possible.
Okay.
In the most vague way possible. Let's say that there's an arbitrage to be had on iBurn. People might be incentivized to mint the iBurn token, and thus they're putting in economic energy, right? So in a way, is it not that much different than buying off market? It's kind of similar, right? Like, you're creating the token, you're obtaining the token by putting value in.
Yeah, whichever way. If there's a price for something, then however people are going to get to it, they're going to get to it. Sure.
Once it starts funneling the PLS into the buy and burn for iBurn, that creates a permabull that is entirely a smart contract that only wants iBurn. It only wants it, and when it has it, all it wants to do is burn it.
You know, it's interesting that
pretty vague. I'm trying to keep it vague there.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
well, hold on. One other component that RH Max, I think, slipped in, but he was super correct in, is that it doesn't burn pulse, but what it does is take that economic energy and bakes it into that token, which the permabull will delete. And because it's using that economic energy, the economic energy that goes into that is actually baked into the perma tokens that we create. That's why they're so rare and valuable, because each time you interact to create, not inflate, you're actually using that economic mass to fuel it with energy, which then is removing the tokens from supply, which is different than airdrops, inflation, all the rest of that. You're going in power the other direction. And that's why this may be a little confusing to a lot of you, because it's never been done before. It's never been thought of this way. That's why, you know, it took us, an entire lifetime to learn how to fly, and then 60 years to go to the moon. Once you learn a different way to do something and you can appropriate that energy or knowledge or use case in a different method, you can do great things.
Yeah, and just to add on real quick, because iBurn's not going to exist, when we launch, there will be no iBurn, right? So if you just for a second, think about how popular providing LP is right now in this community in particular. There's a lot of people that like to provide liquidity and earn fees off of that. So if you know that you could be a whale on day one and provide liquidity, then there's an incentive for those guys to start the flywheel. They will go in, they will mint a bunch of iBurn, they will create a liquidity pair, and they'll sit back and enjoy the fees because they know they'll always have a buyer in the smart contract. Once that starts, you're already creating an arbitrage opportunity, which drives in more people who mint more, who then supply the buy and burn, where the buy and burn will just continue to buy and delete. That's all it wants to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, what we've seen with GIF and PGIF, the first iteration of this, is there's not just that arbitrage between the different tokens like we had talked about earlier, Big K, but also the arbitrage between that ceiling price of iBurn being the Icosa price plus 1,500 PLS that it costs to run through the protocol. We saw this with GIF and PGIF, where the protocol fee is 10 pulse per GIF to turn it into PermaGIF. So we have this constant fluctuating ceiling where as the price of GIF goes up because people are buying it to mint PGIF, as people come into the system and the price of PGIF goes above that ceiling, you're seeing people sell down the PGIF, go buy new GIF, and also have additional pulse left over to not only repeat the process, but additional pulse on top of that. So people are stacking pulse. They are getting all of their bags of GIF replaced, as well as gaining PGIF all at the same time. There's another arbitrage that isn't being talked about a lot, and I tried to talk to the people in the Telegram chat, but there is a pool for GIF and PGIF out there now, and it's got very thick liquidity provided by the users, which is great. This is so much of the liquidity in GIF and PGIF is user generated. People are seeing the fees, and they're helping put up the liquidity in this thing. And so this is not, there's no team allocation for liquidity. And we're very fortunate to have a community that understands that and understands liquidity positions. But what you're also seeing with this new GIF PGIF pool is you're seeing people, whenever the price of PGIF is below that ceiling price. So right now, let's see, last I looked at the chart, GIF was 263 pulse. PGIF was 273, but it was dipping down to like 271. So there's an opportunity now using the pool to use GIF to buy PGIF with for cheaper than it would cost to actually run through the PermaGIF protocol to mint PGIF. So people are getting a better buy using their GIF to buy PGIF. So there's an arbitrage on both sides. If it goes above the ceiling, you can get more GIF and pulse. If it goes below, you can buy PGIF for less expensive than it would be to mint it through the protocol. So there's a constant arbitrage. That's why you don't see selling like this. And there's been 10, actually, I was counting earlier today with all the volume that's gone through there. There's been hundreds of thousands of dollars in profits taken by people as they're still arbitraging and building up their pulse in their gift bags at the same time. We see or potentially hypothesize that the same thing's going to happen with Icosa. So not just bring them to parity, but also have a constant burn. Because if you're to run something through a protocol that has a fee, that 85% of it is going to buy and burn that particular token, it's automatically worth more than what you originally bought it for. Plus that arbitrage opportunity exists both directions.
You know, I wrote this in 3 smart contracts with less than 150 lines of code. So keep that in mind when we talk about all these crazy theories and like all these different mechanics at play. It's actually quite simple. It's just something that hasn't been done before. So there's a lot of crazy stuff that we can experiment with that none of us are really used to. So just keep that in mind. And this is designed to make it feasible for anybody to speculate on a crypto, not have to worry about staking it, not having to worry about coming back and unstaking it, not having to worry about connecting to dApps to claim things, not having to worry about any of that stuff. This is as complex or as simple as you want it to be.
Yep. And there's the possibility, this is agnostic too. So this protocol can be built, it has to be built individually for each token, but it is possible to do this with anything. And the different tokenomics we've thought about, the different mechanisms working behind the scenes may work differently with Icosa versus if we were to ever to apply it to Hex, but they would be very similar and it could still have the same effect to them. who doesn't want to bring parity to all these BRC20s? Is that not what we talked about from the speculation 2 years before PulseChain was even launched when Richard was talking about it?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, just real quick. If you're somebody who's say you're in a different community, right? Say you're in a different community, you're looking at this and you're like, this is stupid. I don't want any part of that. There's also another term that I would like the community's help to come up with of whatever the opposite of a vampire attack is. It's I like the Big K's piggyback attack. Maybe that's what it'll be, the piggyback attack or something like that.
Piggyback attack.
Who doesn't want a new protocol built on their token that simply burns their token?
Yeah.
There is no negative externality. We're not asking for a sacrifice. We're not making you give us your tokens. Nothing. All it does is it burns your token and creates arbitrage to potentially pump the token that you love most. So just remember, sure, I tested it first, or we tested it first on the GIFT token to see if it worked. Now we're launching it on Icosa. Whatever your favorite token is, we could easily launch it on that. So just keep that in mind.
Not only that, also makes
and most of the people just one last thing. A lot of the guys who came in early and were all about like these other communities, and they were very critical on this protocol at first. They kind of changed their opinion really quick when they learned that it can go on their token, and now all of a sudden they're a big supporter. Now all of a sudden they really like this. They're like, okay, I love this. This is a great idea. Like when can you put it on X, Y, and Z token? So just keep that in mind. We're not extracting anybody from their community, extracting anybody from their token, trying to extract them from their ideals or their narratives. We're here to build and like get these communities back together talking again at the very least.
100.
Kind of like
And it's
Piggy
actually,
Gift.
it adds, Piggy gets pretty good. It adds a feature onto your token, whether you were born in PermaTech or whether we're applying it to your use case. I know Zenith had something we wanted to pull up and talk about.
Oh, I was just wanted to go back to Big K's original question there, which is why do you want the iBurn token? I think that there's some folks out there that might feel that they missed out on the launch of GIF and PGIF, and that's understandable because at this point you can't put the genie back in the bottle. However, as I alluded to earlier, when iBurn comes out, I think that we're going to see a world where it's pre and post iBurn. What I mean by that is the PermaGIF token is no longer going to be only this kind of like binary token where like GIF and PGIF are in this relationship in a balance. But now you're actually going to have iBurn come into the mix, and it's actually going to be pumping the PGIF token as well. And it is kind of acting as the new PGIF token because it is that binary between Pulse and Hedron to create that iBurn token. So if you feel like you missed out on the PGIF launch, this might be an opportunity for you. And by the way, if you look back at the charts, that's one of the reasons why you might feel that way. And then just for some quick stats, I ran some calculations earlier about the difference between PGIF and iBurn right now is that obviously PGIF uses 10 pulse per token in the contract, and then iBurn is going to use 1,500 pulse. Obviously, that's 150x difference in pulse, which means there's going to be 150x more buying power to buy and burn the iBurn token. And then if you want to see what it's done with the price of PGIF over the time is that it's actually reduced because PGIF is more expensive in terms of pulse. It means that it is now a lower percentage of pulse that is buying that token. Because iBurn has not had this functionality yet, it means that that pulse is going to be a lot higher percentage to start with. So for example, right now it costs about 0.58 or 0.058 cents in pulse to make a PGIF out of GIF. And if you wanted to do that with iBurn out of Hedron, right now it would cost you about 7.5 cents of pulse. If you look at that in percentage terms, it means that the pulse in terms of PGIF is 3.6% of the price versus the iBurn or Hedron right now, which is sitting at about 6.8 cents. The pulse required to make that is actually greater than the value of the token now, and that ratio is 109%, which means that the opportunity in relation from the economic value of Pulse buying and burning its own token is pretty much like 30 times higher than the proven token that the guy succeeded with the experiment of GIF and PGIF.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, he knew nothing about Icosa Hedron until he came to the house, and I put him on the spot for the last 2 days. So he has done pretty good. Be like, I have no idea what this is, and I'm like, well, today's training day. You're jumping in and explaining it live. So,
go ahead. Go ahead, cool.
Go ahead, RG.
Two things. First of all, I want to give Fast Abdul his 2 seconds for his $2. Thanks, bro. I don't know if anybody wants to answer your question.
$2.61. It's Uruguayan pesos. So
thanks for the $2.61. I don't know if anybody wants to answer this or not, but I'll put it up there for you, bro, just because.
I mean, I do agree that like I don't know how y'all think about that, but I'm sure that having an incentivized pool on a balancer fork would be fantastic, or on 2 fucks, which is, what further than that would be a good thing. I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, yield on yield is great. I mean, if someone's providing liquidity, they want to, have a gauged pool. Why wouldn't that be good?
I love the PHUX exchange. I love the whole PH ecosystem. Those are all whale tools, very successful on Ethereum that we need here if we're going to incentivize whales to come over here. Anyone wants to put GIF, PGIF, and iBurn in pools, I'll be happy to reach out to them about putting a gauge on it. But that's completely up to the community. But I love what they do over there, and the balancer fork is absolutely amazing code. So
yep.
And
here's the one thing about that. Well, hold on, here's one other thing is that by putting that onto something like Fux or 2 Fux or Spark Swap or all the rest of that, you're still not on our side from the iBurn or the GiffTEC side, because all of this is GiffTEC suite. Does not inflate. We still have the no leaky boat, all of the pillars that we held in mind, and you can earn yield on other platforms from this as well, while maintaining the integrity of number go up on the core principle of the balancing loop and the reinforcement loop that we have together. A question I was asked a while back, it was talking about the Grace token, and GIF knows a lot about that. And did you see that over there, GIF? You want to talk about that for a bit?
Well, before we switch subjects, can we stick on this one more second, and then let's go.
This one's important.
Let's go back to that, because what I was digging out of here also, as we were talking about the value of the tokens and the system itself. Is this also work like pairing LPs, how they push the price of one another up? Because if the price of Pulse starts going up and the ratios are obviously still the same, what does this do for the tokens? Could you guys explain that? Because I'm dangerous. I'm thinking right now, but what happens when the price of Pulse moons and you're still the same rate of obviously the same ratios of burning? What does that do to the price of things, guys?
The USD value right now, because we measure everything in GIF and PGIF and iBurn, we're going to be measuring everything in Wrap Pulse. So when the price of Wrap Pulse goes up, it slingshots, as a reflective system, as Kool-Aid would say, it slingshots that price up in USD value.
So that's what he means by the reflective system, is that, that because of the price of Pulse going up, then that also, without LPs, without pairs, without them moving each other up in price that way, this also is another way of connecting the tokens to the value of Pulse.
Yep. It sure does. That's not the only reflexive system within this reflexive system, but it is definitely one and very instrumental part of this. So we're
this
always
is actually, instead of a leaky boat, this is part of the sales of the system right here.
That's right. Cells on top of cells on top of cells interlinked.
Nice.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, Cap, so if Pulse goes up, because the ratio between GIF and PGIF is measured in Pulse, if the US dollar amount of Pulse changes, it will actually affect the ratio of the GIF and PGIF and will start to affect the arbitrage opportunities either direction, depending on which way it goes.
Yes. Okay, so that's a little murder mystery we're waiting for the community to figure out, and Zenith, ding, 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 figures that one out. This is just going to fuel the arbitrage opportunity, still making PGIF more rare and still dragging the whole system up as a whole.
Okay. Tell me that down and explain that to me a little bit deeper so that I can understand what's the mechanics of what happens there when the value of Pulse goes up and it starts and the ratios are obviously the same. Tell me exactly what happens so that I can understand.
Do you gentlemen mind if I jump in on this one?
Of course, please. Yes.
You can kind of picture it as using different measuring sticks. If you're using one measuring stick to look at the ratio, and then you switch over to that USD measuring stick, and then you start adjusting it over here, you now have changed your USD adjustments. So if you're looking at Pulse in that US dollar amount, as that changes, it means that it's a different scale. It means that the ratio between GIF and PGIF is going to move differently.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That makes sense. I was picking it up as we were talking, and thanks for explaining it, guys. That's what I'm trying to dig out, is some of these details and how these systems are tied together, how the boat stops leaking, and how the sails get set. And you guys are doing a great job. Yes, good job.
So-
Good job.
Crypto
Hold on one
Mando
second.
has
I
a
had to
great.
look back in here when he was talking about it, and it's like, gentlemen, we are going to talk about weights and measures, but how will they understand it? Nobody knows.
Nobody
How many
knows.
yards in a mile? Nobody knows.
Reference to the best Saturday Night Live skit since the Adam Sandler days that went on recently with Nate Bird's, whatever his last name is. So if anyone wants to reference that, if anyone wants to go see it, it is hilarious. So Crypto Mando, yes, you are correct. Anything paired heavily with a legit PLS LP will go up when PLS makes a move. That wasn't obvious. That's obvious. Yes, you are 100% correct. That's just an added bonus, icing on the cake. That wasn't something that we were hoping to solve for. We already knew that to be a constant, so that wasn't a big deal. But it does spurn a better arbitrage opportunity, and it can, as was explained by Zenith just a moment ago.
Yeah, I mean, in a negative way, I guess you could say, if Pulse price, let's say we go down 10x from here. Ooh, that sounds painful, you know. But let's say we go down another 90%, right? You know, then I would say that there would be less of an. I mean, the arbitrage opportunity would be pretty small in this situation. So it would. I would imagine. I mean, I would imagine that it would slow down the system to some degree. For, you know, like, I think that if there's a one, you know, it either slow down the system, as in, like, people are less inclined to engage in any of that arbitrage opportunity. Although if we do go back up, the sheer number of coins that would be bought and burnt, you know, with a lesser economic input would be probably a bit higher.
That becomes like a parade of imaginary horribles, right? So the price goes down so much in Pulse that people stop using the reflexive system. So what would have to happen there, because there's an arbitrage opportunity, regardless of the price of Pulse, it's still a Pulse differential. So as the price goes down, there would have that the price of GIF and PGIF would have to be even with just that 10-point differential, and no one trade at all in or out, because as soon as they do, they're going to respawn that ARB opportunity.
Well, if they do go, well, what I'm saying is that, like, if the price is low enough, even if there is an ARB opportunity there, if like this, you know, sure, there's a couple pulse difference in price, but, like, if a couple pulse difference is like infinitesimally much smaller than it is now, then, like, who the fuck's going to click the buttons?
Well,
you know?
a parade of imaginary horribles, because no one is wanting to play on PulseChain ever again and doesn't think it'll ever go back up
I'm just,
again.
that's
I
total
know
parade.
I know
I'm
exactly what
just
you're
like,
saying.
You know, I'm doing both. I like to be very transparent. That, like,
let me throw something in there to think about, though. Okay, let me just throw in some little caveats to think about in this scenario. For one, the value between PLS and so let's say the GIF token or the PGIF, it doesn't matter, whichever one you pick. It doesn't care about US dollar value, right? It's only the ratio between PLS and GIF. So it doesn't care. So one really interesting thing that I love, and this is something we were talking about, you know, I think Sloth, I think I saw you in the stream here, buddy. Like Sloth and I, Alex, these other cats, before PulseChain even launched, we talked about how, you know, when PLS shoots up, it's kind of like a trampoline, like with all the altcoins, right? Because of that paired, that relationship. The best time to get ahead in the PLS in your token, say, scenario, like the best time to get ahead of it is when the PLS price is down. the more you plug into your protocol with the PLS and adjust the ratio, the better you slingshot up when the USD value goes up compared to USD value when we're measuring in USD. This is a hard thing to explain, but the key factor in this is when you have a PermaBull tokenomic that is always feeding the liquidity pool, more PLS and subtracting your token and burning it, it's always hitting that ratio. It's constantly hitting that ratio. So the harder that PLS goes down, the more it gets kind of wound up. So that when you start to see just a little bit of USD value go up, you see that getting compounded on your other end. And if you really study some of these guys' great LP videos, Sloth's got some great ones. Forgive me if I forget all the great videos. I think Axis has some great ones. If you watch those really closely, like they talk about this stuff. And that's what's so cool about a protocol that has PermaBull tokenomics on it, is it's always feeding that ratio. It doesn't care. It's a smart contract. It doesn't have feelings. It just does it all the time, no matter what the price is.
Exactly right.
Now-
And they're flat ratios. Hold on one second, because the addressing of understanding flat binded ratios with multiple flat binded ratios is, let's take an example of Pulse is going down 20%. And if you look at 20%, what's 5 of 20%, now you have 1. So that economic energy, that 20% is smashed down into units of 1. And then if you had to take another X on that, so you have 10 units, you've now doubled the amount of economic energy that Pulse went down on that 20% and smashed it back into the machine, because it has no bloody care about USD price. You have to decouple your head and think about them in smashed ratios. Because the ratios are flat, you can look at that entire reflexive system and understand what it's going to do. So as that's going down in value, you can smash more Pulse into the system. The system can buy that economic energy off the market and then print candles in the other direction. So it's the real leverage, or seesaw, as I like to say, in fat kid and a skinny kid pushing each other up. It's a dynamic way to not only counter, I mean, all bear and bull markets happen, but you have to understand it's not based on price. It's based on economic value being put into the gumball machine and pushing it all the way forward. That is super important to understand with these kind of metrics.
Yes, yes. I mean, obviously, there's always two sides to the crypto coin, the crypto value and the USD value. You know, we all know here in Hex, we've been making more Hex in the worst bear market ever. We've all been making more Hex, all obviously making our bags more valuable in Hex terms, but not in dollar terms so much. So yes, there's two sides of the coin that we all need to obviously always look at. And it's the same argument that, you know, Bitcoiners make with, you know, hey, we measure everything in Bitcoin versus in USD. But you pay your bills in USD. So one of the things, I want to take a quick break, and then I have a question to jump in with. The break is just to let everybody know, you know, about the PulseChain tour going to Europe. I want to tell everybody that on the 14th of June, we are going to Amsterdam. The Atropa dev, Maria, is going to actually be speaking in person there with all of the Germans there. So that is going to be an incredible event. And Amsterdam itself, everybody that I've talked to is going to the Amsterdam event. So that's going to happen on the 14th and 15th. In Berlin will be on the 22nd. That'll be a German language event. So let everybody know that will be an event that's being spoken German. On the 29th, I'll be arriving in Europe. That's for the Hex cruise. We're going from Venice to Greece. That's a heck of a trip. Anybody who's looking, there is a special ticket left out there. Anybody who's looking for a big VIP room on the ship, the cost of the room is inexpensive. Reach out to me, DM me. I have access to one of the suites. Then we are going to Lisbon in Portugal on the 7th. I'll be moving from the cruise after we're done, going to Lisbon. We'll be doing an event in Lisbon, Portugal. And then from there, I'll be going to Munich on the 13th of July. And then on 7/20, we'll be out there with Hexy Baxter, Money Gang Crypto. Those guys will be in London. All the London crew is going to be out there. We'll be doing an event in London, and that's going to be a whole bunch of fun. So go to PulseChainTour.com. Check it out for your tickets. If you're out in Europe, guys, want to go to Europe, come hang out with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. VIP events, the whole shebang shaboom, and a lot of the best of the best in the industry within the RH ecosystem out there in Europe, hanging out with us and speaking at the events. Also, if you can't make it to those events, or if you're in the US and you can't get over there, there is going to be a live streaming of all of it. So on the PulseChainTour.com website, you'll be able to go in and purchase the streams on a monthly basis or whatever it is. I think it's like $9 or whatever, and you can watch event, be part of it that if you need. All right, guys. Question now.
We got you roboting again over here. Yeah, Robo RG, as Crypto Kool-Aid keeps calling you.
Go ahead.
What do I do with my hands?
I got two questions.
Sure.
If we're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of them is, I feel like this is a question I'd love to hear Gifford answer, but is iBurn or Giffordware a perpetual motion machine? If that makes sense.
No, I don't think such a thing really exists, honestly. Like at any given time, the entire community and everybody looking at this could just stop participating.
Yeah.
Like that could happen at any time. And then what happens? Well, eventually the buy and burn runs out of juice. And then nothing happens. Like I'm glad you asked that question, because sometimes it gets I don't know, like we're portraying something that we're not trying to portray, right? Like we're experimenting with all these cool experiments, and we want to explain why we're experimenting in it, and we want to explain why we think it's working, and we want to show everybody like this is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing this. And sometimes it comes off as like, oh yeah, we solved everything. Like even though sometimes when I look at the price chart, I'm like, did we break something? Like is this bad? Like you don't even want to look what it's done against the versus the USD price and versus the PLS price from launch day. You don't even want to look at it. Trust me, it's wild. So I just want to be clear. We don't think that we changed everything forever, but we're doing some fascinating stuff, man. This is super fun. And me as the kind of the geek of the group, like just interfacing with PETITION with a smart contract, it has been like the highlights of my year. Like honestly, like just seeing that work, like sending or like I'm gonna get nerdy, sorry guys, but like asking for a price quote like from your terminal and receiving the price quote, and then you just automate all that into a smart contract so that anybody can click a button or run a script and it just shoots to a PETITION and it does this. Because man, we've got all these different protocols launching, right? They have LP pools and they're all over the place. And the idea that you want to run a buy and burn that only hits one pool, like, come on, that's a little madness. You have to start telling your whole community, only do this pool. I know this is crypto and it's about freedom and stuff, but you can't do any of that, right?
And everything you build on top of my token has to run through that one pool.
Right. And so
until
it's like,
someone decides to subvert your pool by creating new pools. What are you going to do about that?
This is fixable. We don't even have to argue about it anymore.
Yep.
I wanted to show everybody that it could be done, and we did it. And as the geek that I am, because I'm so deep into this stuff and learning this stuff myself, that it's just so gratifying to see this stuff actually work, and it's awesome. And like, why would anybody create a buy and burn that does not run through an aggregator ever again? Why would they do that?
Yeah. No, I think that was really cool. That was a beautiful thing that seems almost like so obvious once it's done. I feel like I don't think people are gonna. I think that's gonna be on people's minds, and I have a feeling it'll be copied.
And just to add on to that,
to your credit,
just to add on to that, I was thankful enough to be. I've got some close friends that are devs that I've known for a long time, right? And one in particular is just his pedigree is insane. Is literally insane. And this guy helped me with making the aggregator upgradable. So in the event that PETITION ever goes down, we can upgrade it to a new aggregator. we can move it. Like if there's a better aggregator that comes out down the road, something more competitive, we can upgrade it. Like we at least had the idea that like, yes, we want to use the aggregator, but how do we make this upgradable? So in case PETITION goes down, we're not just like, you know, stuck without a life raft, right? Ship goes down. No more buy and burn. We can't have that happen. So I don't know. Enough nerd stuff. Sorry.
That's sweet.
I love it.
I'm going to
love
double
it.
tap on the nerd stuff real quick to answer the question about the perpetual motion machine. Crypto itself, as far as I can tell, still operates on the laws of thermodynamics. What I mean by that is the first law of thermo, conservation of energy. Energy can never be created or destroyed. Basically, you can't ever get more than you put in. In this case, energy is just money, which is that like theoretically market cap can go up, but when it comes to small scale stuff itself, you can't just like make something out of nothing and then also be able to extract it and have that money that you made. Shout out to Crypto Sloth for the Degen Roundtable team. He midstream wanted to own the token that had the fewest number of tokens in existence. So he made something called 1 of 1. It literally was a new crypto on PulseChain that had 1 token in existence. And then there's also a show of low liquidity, which is that in 10 minutes, he pumped the coin from $1 to $4 million.
Mhm.
And then 15 minutes later, he dumped it down to 1 cent. So you can't create or destroy the things. And then also we have the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy, aka you can't even get even. And in this case, that's gas fees. All the transactions require a gas fee. So theoretically, there's a little bit of friction, a little bit of drag, a little bit of something pulling back, and you are never going to get 100% efficiency on your transactions. So even though the buy and burn does seem like it could just wind itself up to the moon, there are certain things that kind of hold you as an individual back when it comes to the crypto sphere. Sorry, was that too nerdy?
No, that
That was
great.
awesome. That was great. At least in my opinion. That buy and burn was fueled by the users. That money was put in. Anytime it's buying a token or catching sell pressure that came from a user, it is at least in that aspect zero sum. Just like Zenith, you said, I think like what you can't pump with anything that didn't come in from someone.
Mhm.
But I do have my second question. Okay, we got a buy and burn. We've talked about a little bit the fact that it uses a DEX aggregator, and that's very cool. Do we know any other specifics? Buy and burns have been in their shorter existence sometimes a controversial topic in how they're run, and I feel like there are competing values when it comes to decentralized and the potential for gaming, or not decentralized and maybe some more power in the hand of the person with the keys. And I'm curious how much you want to say or how much you can say about how that's going to work or what that'll look like.
So my stance is pretty hardline when it comes to this. The reason why is because any funds that go into a contract that is designed to run a buy and burn, right? That doesn't belong to anybody. It only belongs to the protocol. There should always be a zero expectation. Everybody should know if you're interacting with any of the contracts involved with this buy and burn contract, that you accept the no expectation standpoint. And that's something that is interesting because I've seen communities not stand by that, and they feel entitled to say that X, Y, and Z should be done with it. But I just don't see it that way. I really don't. And I'm on record saying this long before I started building any of this stuff. If you're talking about your tokens and where that's at using your keys, that's completely different. But when there's a transaction being done where you're taking your economic value and you're minting the token, as soon as you choose to interact with that smart contract, you give up your funds and you receive your token in return immediately on the spot. It's not like an IOU down the road or any of that nonsense. You get it immediately. That transaction is done. You walk away from that protocol and there is no, it's like, purchasing something at the store and asking, what'd you do with my $10 I bought that soda with? How are you investing that? How am I going to get that back later on? Are you making soda better with that $10? Right? That's just the way I see it. That's the way I interact. And if you start playing the games of, I think the protocol should be run this way. Well, guess what? We all have an opinion on how protocol should be run, and we'll never get anywhere with that. Now, that being said, I am always looking for a better way to build things, and I do not plan on my experiments ending anytime soon. I'm completely addicted to this stuff. So I will be continually experimenting with everything. Every aspect that you see, I will continue to work on for sure to make it better.
And that's the interesting thing. Is like a lot of the stuff, if I had to boil it down, I put out a video in our Telegram is another Mike Sellers video, and it's 3 different game designers talking. And they're like loop, 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 loop. And I'm like, wow, it's a whole bunch of me quacking. I never thought that would be like, wow, I didn't think I realized how confusing I was, but I understand them completely. Economic energy and binding of balancing loops, reinforcement loops, and systemic design is vastly important to study and to see how it has its actual use case, because the use case itself is evident in everything. When I was hopping in and listening offline, when Zenith was talking about economic energy and perpetual energy that can't be created nor destroyed, it's just like turning coal into a diamond. You use that perpetual energy and you can't extract it without understanding where it goes, what it does, and what it uses within that reinforcement and balancing loop together. And this is why this stuff isn't it's always upgradable, but you need to be understanding on how it works to begin with so you can pivot in real time. Real systemic design in a video game system means that you have to be able to reflexively react to what the player does or what the system does in real time. And that's what we're trying to do with this entire GiffTEC suite, or these experiments, as we're calling them, because we're trying to be fully transparent that this hasn't been done, but we've been frustrated with how DeFi for All hasn't been using these kind of ideals, and we wanted to strike on it because we believe in them, not just the pillars on why it works, but the experiment to show others why you should understand this rather than just copy, change some lipstick on a pig or the paint on a car and then call that different design. It's not. It's digesting it. It's reflexive back onto yourself instead of going forward, right? You're taking 2 steps back instead of taking 3 steps forward. And that's what we're trying to do with each different iteration of everything that GIF makes is that. And it holds those tenements to those original pillars that we set out to create.
I have a question. I remember the one that I lost when I went in robo mode. So we explained a little bit about the details of how the iBurn protocol works, but there's a slight difference with the iBurn protocol than the main or the protocol that you were using as a proof of concept, which was GIFF-PGIF. And I think that, and I obviously no expectations of you doing anything else or whatever, but that seems to not be just an experiment, because the iBurn burn protocol does something to PGIF too, doesn't it?
Yeah. So as the
I don't think we've talked about that.
Sure. As the protocol fee is paid to mint the iBurn token, 15% of that PLS that comes in is actually sent to the PGIF buy and burn address. So it's just adding. So now you've got 2 different protocols feeding the same buy and burn. So kind of like a mini compounding effect.
So every time, well, I can't say that, but obviously the first protocol that you've built is going to have an effect on PGIF. So, and again, I'm not asking you to say anything or what you're going to do, but obviously as you make more protocols, that's a possibility of that happening as more protocols are built on this with this concept.
I like that you said it's a possibility. Yeah.
Well, here's something that I use in my day job. I usually have a gut temperature and gauge on what I think something's going to do. And that's why I can speak about systems very quickly and easily. The way I do this internally on my day job is I take what I think is correct. I divide that in half, and I divide that again in a third. And that means I'm never usually say I'm right, but I'm usually not wrong, because I'm coming from the principle of what I think the number is, kick it in half, kick that in the third. And if you use that as a general rubrics to everything, you're now usually in the correct direction. You don't have to be right, just not wrong. And so what that does is if you take 22.5x, divide that in half, that's 11-ish, and then you divide that in a third, that's 3-ish. That gives a 3x ceiling to the PGIF ratio, period. Now, it can go back down to 10. Sure. But the amount of wiggle room in between there is now 3x larger. So let's just call that 40 pulse. That's an easy way to look at when people are arbing in between 1 to 2 pulse difference. The arb looseness of the system should be 3x larger because it can go 22x larger for each Icosa turn into iBurn. Then you use that same logic that you had on when you see between GIF and PGIF and apply that to Icosa and iBurn. So your Zenith had a great way of explaining it again, that there'll never be anything after pre-iBurn and post-iBurn because you're taking the PGIF scenario and you're shoving it now underneath the GIF or the Icosa and iBurn because it's now the base for its original like launch date to be the start. And the other one launches back up because it's reflexive onto the system that it was designed through.
So and if I recall, the GIF is there's a set amount of those tokens, and when you turn them into PGIF, they're gone forever, right? Is that correct?
Yes, Big K, your questions are just spot on, man. I really appreciate that you're here right now. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, thanks, man.
You always lead us right in the right direction. I don't even know if you're intentional on it or not, but
we didn't feed him questions beforehand. I promise.
No,
guys.
we did not.
They're just so perfectly the way you softball them to us here.
I saw the flow chart. I can understand some systems. What's interesting about that is as there's much less supply, that pulse ratio is becomes that kind of smaller really over time because you add more layers, it'll get larger, but that's not as big when there's 20% less coins and 30%, it's because the coins that are left should be, worth more.
Well, let me go on this little mini stat thing, and let's see if that kind of helps guide you either in answering your question or guides you to a more specific question, right?
I'm kind of just.
I got you. I like where you brought us. So let's just think about supply real quick. So the GIF token was pre-minted with 1 billion supply of tokens, right? And no more can ever be created of the GIF token. In the PGIF launch with 0 supply. So there was no pre-mint of that. The ratio between minting GIF to PGIF is 1-to-1. So what we're saying here,
a max of 1 billion tokens for PGIF.
So there's a max of 1 billion tokens on PGIF if all the GIF tokens were burnt. So another way to say that is the max supply of both combined GIF and PGIF equals 1 billion. Right?
Amen.
And that number is deflationary because the PGIF is getting burnt on the latter part.
So one other thing that I'm just going to throw in there and then hop in Big K. So if you remember my talks on Pulsar about Titan being proof of ETH, besides all of our pillars and components between PermaBull that we identify with, GiffTEC is proof of Pulse, 100%. And that's why you don't calculate it in USD because of the root economic factor that GIF just explained. And it's just done in Pulse by Pulse to compound and use Pulse regardless of price. It's proof of Pulse regardless.
Nice. Real quick. Thanks, Fast Abdul, for the $6.20 worth of what is it? Indonesian rupiah?
Yeah.
Burn LP
That's 2 goats
token.
worth, by the way. 2 goats.
Explode the pulse chain. Boom. Thanks, Fast.
That's one way to lock up liquidity.
And Crypto Mondo. You know what? Mondo, to answer your question, lives better complexity when it explains protocol, feels all over the place, hone in. So look, I've been in the rooms listening to these freaking brilliant minds here for months, and my brain hurts and falls out of my ears at times and stuff. And it's taken me a long time to interact and figure out these things. And it does take a long time, and there is a lot to digest, and we're gonna call it a night here pretty soon. I want the guys to all give their last words and kind of ask some last questions, or maybe give some. We kind of touched on everything. I know, but I think the
beginning of the stream, we honed in really well on the core activity, and it's actually fairly simple. It's just not easy. So not everything that is simple is easy.
And I think that there's a lot of possibilities here and a lot of speculation of what can happen is really what these conversations are about is the possibilities and what can happen here, because it's a lot of unknowns, because this is all stuff that hasn't been done before. Now, these things, again, everybody, I want you to understand that the complexity of this thing isn't something new. These are things that are taken off of the real marketplace that have been programmed into a crypto. That's it. That is all. All of these things exist in the real world. All of these metrics exist in the real world. These levers and movements happen naturally in the real world, in the stock markets and money for eons. It's all happened. Now, the beautiful thing about it is because of the advent of PulseChain, because cheaply these protocols can be built and developed, we've got people like GIFF actually going, hey, I can do this. And here's how easy it is. And I'm going to bring all these metrics from the real world that make things go up in price, which Richard taught us all. Hey, I'm going to make something that goes up in price because of how it's built. Well, GIFF just expounded upon it and said, hey, I'm going to grab all these other things that I've seen people using that work and some other metrics from the real world. And let's see how well they do. If I plug up all the holes from what I've seen other projects fail at, because let's face it, there have been other projects and protocols that have come out that have made attempts to do some things like this and have failed. And GIFF took his time. He waited, he calculated, he watched, he learned, he developed, and he built something better sales and no leaks. So that's what's going on here. Everybody's just kind of expounding a little bit about what the possibilities are and what we just seen happen. And again, like Larry said, not speculation, but what was the word again, Larry?
Simulation.
Simulation. Actually, I got a new one right now. It's going to be, we don't have promises, we have principles. And so, like, if you really want to understand these idioms on how they work, you turn on a car every day. Do you really know how a combustion engine works? Do you really know the difference between putting fuel, diesel, or gasoline into it? And sure, maybe you can turn on a car. Do you know how to operate the difference between a manual and automatic? You don't have to understand all of the principles, but you could and you should. The difference is how do you use the system correctly for the complexity that you want? You can mint your iBurn and enjoy it. You can buy your GIF and mint your PGIF and enjoy it. If that's as simple as you want to take the system, dope. Check it out and enjoy it. But if you come into our Telegram, I'm going to try to keep explaining other ways to understand the principles, not the promises, because that's the difference between a lot of these things. People promise a lot of speculation without simulation. And we are doing all these pillars, not only because we believe it, we understand it. We're trying to refine it and bring it to the show floor on why this is not just a new car, but a new way to travel through DeFi for all.
Exactly. All right, guys, I'm going to let everybody kind of say their piece and end this so that everybody's brains can reform again, and they can fix the leaks coming out of their ears. Anybody who wants to go first and ending this?
Zenith's got
well,
it.
I'm happy to hop in and just say, hey, Zenith, thank you so much for joining. This is super cool. Appreciate you coming out to spend some time with Larry to understand the system and go through the discussion we had at the DGen roundtable. There should be a video posted in there about the discussions of PGIF and GIF. We've got lots of stuff in the GiffTEC or the Giffordware Telegram, which is in the description below. We've got a lot of pinned stuff, including that same discussion that was had. It was a huge honor to have both Big K and Maxim here. I hold you guys in the highest of esteem and regard, and I appreciate you guys being here. I got to meet I've met Big Kurkowski in the past, but it was really cool to see him at the premiere. But Maxim was able to make it as well for the highest of stakes, and it was a huge honor and privilege for me. And so to see you guys have interest in this and want to or be willing, I should say, to come into this stream tonight means the absolute world to me. So thank you guys. It's held you guys in such high regard for so long. So thank you guys for being here. And GIFF, you're a genius, my friend. And thanks for letting me be part of the process and let me try to poke holes in your processes and propose things that you poke holes in mine. And it's been an absolute fun journey. And it's just began. This is the beginning of the journey. That's the crazy thing about it. Larry brought this crazy cadre of people together, including some of the most amazing artwork people that I've ever met in my life that can just do the craziest things and it looks gorgeous in the shortest amount of time period possible. And Captain, it is always a pleasure, brother. We talk almost daily and it still isn't enough. Just absolutely love you to death, man. You've been nothing but a pillar to the community and someone to look up to that's more about building bridges than anyone can claim here on Twitter or on YouTube. You are in a lot of ways the glue that has held this community together. So thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks for the kind words, my friend. Giff, you got something to say here before you end?
Just that I'm sorry that I apologize that we didn't get to talk a little bit more about the iBurn protocol that's launching. But when you're talking about all this new mechanics and new tests and new speculations and simulations that we're literally doing in real time, right? There's just so much to talk about. There's so much. And once you kind of wrap your head around GIF and PGIF, the Icosa system and building on top of that with iBurn is just, it starts to get really exciting. Yep. Because now we're able to look at a completely different ecosystem, not one that we built from the ground up, but one that somebody else has built, that built on somebody else's build, right? And we're starting at the base level with that. And it's going to be fascinating to watch at the very least. And Cap, thank you for having us on. And dude, thanks for all your support over the years. It's been fantastic working with you.
And the one thing, if you want to understand that Delta, come on in the chat room and chat with us. We're kind of happy. There's a whole bunch of, it's like the first days of Hex where everything's good, happy, and we want to spread the knowledge, the love, and the ability and the utility on what's going on there. And then someone's asking about some gift clothing. I believe we will have that in very, very soon.
I want a baby gift shirt. I got to have a baby gift shirt.
Oh no, dude, just wait to the launch party on Friday. I am grinding to have something very, very, very special for that release.
So can we just verify that, please, too? I don't think that we verified that tonight. Put it in stone. So iBurn is coming this Friday, correct?
100. It's
100.
Done.
No 2 more weeks. Not, hey, we got a mistake. We got a problem. It's coming Friday.
Actually, you know what? Let's launch it right now.
Give a track record that's very, very plausible.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So
wait. I don't have access to the wallet with my Icosa in it.
All your guys' eyes got all big. It's hilarious.
You do
we
this.
Wouldn't put it past you, bro.
This is exactly what you do, and you're my dearest friend in the world. Call me up in the middle of shit with a boss. Be like, yeah, I just did this. FYI, bye. Click.
So Friday, guys, we're gonna have a launch party for the iBurn. That'll be right around there for the hangout and all that good stuff, and we'll be doing the same thing, bringing all the smartest minds in. We'll talk a lot more in depth. So if you're interested, down below here, the ticker that's running by is the Telegram group for the Gifford, where crypto chat for anybody to come in, ask any questions. There, you know what? I've got to admit it. When we first started putting this project together, I was very apprehensive to talk to the community about it because I've always stayed away from crypto projects and anything else. I thought Icosa and Hedron were brilliant. I love Alex. I think he's an upstanding human being, and I wouldn't have never even said anything about his protocols. I never told anybody to buy any of these protocols. I've only ever told you guys to buy Hex. That's the one I stand behind. But when it comes to things that prove concepts, things that change crypto for good, for real. Those are the things I talk about: Pulse, Hex, Hedron, Icosa, and now Giffordware. What he is doing to me is just as brilliant, just as innovative, just as connected as all of those other protocols that have changed crypto. And I'm putting them in the same category as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Hex, Hedron, Icosa. Gifford now is in that category as far as I'm concerned, as a protocol that is changing crypto and bringing true DeFi products to the marketplace. So that's why I stand behind them. That's why I'm here even having this stream. I don't talk about protocols. And I'm going to tell you all right now, I'm not telling you to buy it. Don't buy it. Don't buy any of these tokens. Stay away. Just watch what they do.
In fact, definitely don't buy, but don't even participate. Just don't. We don't even want you.
Sit back and watch.
Yep.
Sit back and watch, and watch history be made right before your very eyes, because these guys are doing it, and I'm 100% standing behind them and watching them. Real quick, I want to add one thing to this. We're all going to watch this, and this is for next week, and this is something that who built this? Does it say who made this?
That's our guy. That's our UI UX guy. One of Larry's, or for Kool-Aid's best friends over the years. Crypto Durpin.
Oh Lord, what did he do? What did he do?
All right.
I haven't even seen
Go ahead, SJ. Let her rip. Sound?
No sound.
Oh, we had a fail.
Oh man, that looks party.
Wasn't that good?
People. Those are my pixel people. We're so slave to the pixel.
So that was that. Well, there was sound with that. It's really cool. It's sometimes that we don't get the sound.
We'll put it in the Telegram for sure, and it'll be on the channel, the GiffTEC channel.
See, this is my friends fucking with me. I didn't even know that was coming. I'm over here working on the other surprise video, but no, and that's the thing, is like we got a good core and we got a good heart, and that's what we're doing over here.
Yeah, that's where I judge all of you guys by. Each and every one of you are sitting in front of me because I believe in all of you, and I think you guys are trying to do good, and not only for this ecosystem, but for the world and yourselves, your families, my family. You guys have everything in mind. All of you guys have your hearts in the right place, and that's why I endorse all of you, and I call you guys all my friends. So appreciate you all coming. Thanks for being here, guys. Don't miss the launch party Friday. We're gonna have a badass freaking time. It's gonna be cool as shit. All right, see you guys. Why is Hex better than Bitcoin? Well, first of all, it's the fundamentals of the code. The fundamentals of the code are better than Bitcoin's fundamentals. The inflation model is better than Bitcoin's inflation model. The staking feature is better than a mining feature. It's new tech versus old tech. It's decentralized versus centralized. Yes, all of those things